What's going on, guys? Welcome into the Fantasy Slant. It is powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. I'm your host, Mike Tagliere. Alongside of me, I have Kevin Cole. You can find both of us on Twitter. He is at Cole_Kev. Myself, I am at Mike Tagliere NFL. We don't want to waste too much time going through, what we do outside of PFF and this podcast, but I do want, because we have so much to cover this week, but I do want to ask Kevin, what are some big takeaways that you took from week 7? Anything that changes your opinion on a player, anything like that? Like, what's going on in your mind after week 7?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of interesting takeaways. I mean, we had guys like Lamar Miller start to come back. You saw, Marshawn Lynch have a pretty good game also. So I think one of my things I'm going to be looking for going forward is you have a few guys who have either been underperforming or have been injured that might not be at their kind of full level, let's say right now, full value wise. I mean, you have Alshon Jeffrey who's just starting to come back. You have Des Bryant who's going to get back into the fold. Eddie Lacy hopefully is healthy again. Marshawn's healthy. So there's a bunch of guys that I think you still might be able to get relatively cheap, and I don't really see a reason, at least at this point, why they can't perform at their ADP levels going forward.
No, one I'm really interested about is Eddie Lacy. And obviously, if you haven't heard the news, James Starks has now popped up on the injury report, and he missed practice or was limited, whatever the case may be. And Eddie Lacy, it's his backfield again, I guess you could say, to lose. I don't know really what to say here. Lacy hasn't looked very good. And while I've had a lot of people ask me about, should I trade for Lacy right now? What should I do? While I do like the idea of buying low on Lacy, I give it one more week. He's got a tough matchup this week. He's definitely someone that I'm going to target. This week he'll have to score in order to live up to even close to RB1 status that he was drafted as. But one that I'm interested to talk about, like a little bit in regards to the last couple of weeks, DeAndre Hopkins. Everybody was willing to trade him for the world. They were willing to trade him straight away for Julio Jones, who, by the way, is off the injury report. But DeAndre Hopkins has got some tough matchups coming up after this week. I know he's got Tennessee this week, but Cincinnati, Jets, New Orleans, Delvin Breaux has been really good. Buffalo's duo, New England, they try and take away a number one. There's a tough schedule coming up, but there's a lot of interesting players you're starting to learn more and more about. Lamar Miller, obviously a locked-in RB1 for the rest of the season. I do believe that. I believed in him at the beginning of the year. It's just finally coming to life. They're giving him carries. What he did last week, only playing basically the first half, was pretty impressive. But one of my biggest takeaways, Martavis Bryant. He got it done 2 weeks in a row with Landry Jones. I actually went out and traded for him in a league this week. I gave away Jordan Matthews and who was the other player I gave away in that one? I can't even remember. But I basically went away and traded a little bit more than I probably should have for Martavis Bryant. But I wanted him on at least one of my teams. He's got that upside, and Roethlisberger's due back this week. But a big injury, Arian Foster. Kevin, are you panicking if you owned Arian Foster and someone is offering you a running back, maybe a low end, maybe a Darren McFadden for Arian Foster, or for one of your receivers? Are you panicking with Foster, or are you just going to kind of play it waiver wire, or just Frankenstein running back?
I don't have Arian Foster in a lot of leagues. I actually had him in a couple that I was getting him later, and I thought, it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I don't have him anywhere once he started to come back. And now that he's gone again, you're kind of scrambling. I mean, I did end up picking up Chris Polk in a handful of leagues. I mean, I think Alfred Blue in the Chris Polk situation is kind of difficult to figure out what's going to happen there. Polk was actually a pretty good running back in college, although he went undrafted, I think, into the NFL. He was effective in Philadelphia. He's a guy who can catch the ball. He might be okay, but it was very strange because the bids on Chris Polk were all over the place, because in some leagues, I didn't have any waiver bids left, so I was just bidding $1 and I actually got him because no one else bid. And others, I was bidding, $150, $200 out of $1,000 budget and wasn't getting them. So it was really all over the place here. So I'm trying to hedge somewhat on there, but the most likely scenario is that those guys are gone, and you're going to have to see if you can pick someone else up. I do think there are more interesting names that'll pop up in the running back category from here on going forward, just because of injuries and other things that can happen. Whereas for wide receivers, guys are pretty much locked in. I don't necessarily see anyone bursting on the scene and breaking out the entire rest of the year. So I wouldn't necessarily trade a good wide receiver that you might use for a running back. I might hang tight to see if you can just grab someone else up who might be usable first. But if you're super deep at wide receiver, then that might not be a bad move.
Yeah, and in a PPR league, I don't think that maybe Jonathan Grimes may not be a bad pickup, considering people kind of overlooked it. Foster was really bad, actually, like running the football. He was 2.6 yards per carry, while Blue and Polk are respectively at 3.9, 3.5. But Jonathan Grimes can catch a whole lot of passes out of that backfield. They're in garbage time mode all the time. And as we talked about, DeAndre Hopkins is going to see a whole lot of tension. So that's definitely something I wanted to touch base on. But moving into the slate of games, we have quite a few to cover here. Let's start with the Thursday night. Tonight, we are going to be in Foxborough, which, Tom Brady in Foxborough, he's always money. I mean, and while I usually fade players on Thursday Night Football, Tom Brady's thrown, I think it was 20 touchdowns in 8 Thursday night games. So we know that Tom Brady likes the spotlight. We know that. But the players that we're questionable about, Kevin, I want to start with Brandon LaFell. He was targeted, I think it was 8 times last week. He dropped 5 passes. Is he in the doghouse, or can we trust him as a wide receiver 3 this week?
I mean, I think he's gonna see decent volume. So this is a team that loves to pass the ball, the Patriots, so far this year. I mean, we'll see what happens here. They can change up their game plan depending upon opponent, but they've been very heavily skewed towards passing it, even for what you'd expect this year. So I think he's going to see volume. It's probably just one of those things where I don't think he magically forgot how to catch the ball. So he saw, I think it was like 16, 70% of targets, which isn't a huge amount, but with the passing volume of that offense, I think you can trust him to put him in there if you don't have a clearly better option.
Yeah, I was sitting there in one league, and I have Brandon LaFell, and I was debating between him and David Johnson, and it's not really a pretty thing to go with, but I'm sticking with LaFell. I feel like, yes, he had some rust on him. It's going to happen when you don't play for as long as he did. I also think back to LeGarrette Blount, his first game back with the Patriots after suspension. He didn't do so well, so I'm going to give LaFell another shot. I've been receiving some trade offers for him. I know people want to buy low, and if there's someone in your league that's panicking on LaFell, I'm buying low. The upside's there. We know what he did when he played the last 13 weeks of last year. He outproduced Julian Edelman, so it's there. We know it. On the other side of the ball, the Dolphins, they're hot. Their entire offense. I mean, Ryan Tannehill, didn't he throw 18 of 19 last week? 4 touchdowns. Like, obviously, the coaching change did wonders out there. But who do you want to play? If you're playing one receiver outside of Jarvis Landry in this game, would you choose Rashard Matthews or Brandon LaFell? Like, do you like Matthews this week?
It's really tough to say. I mean, the Patriots have this whole thing about taking away one of the top weapons, so I don't know what they're going to do with their defensive coverage. It looks like last week against they did something interesting with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker, and what they did was they kind of double teamed Marshall and then had, I think it was Butler, play man-on-man on Decker. And so the Decker ended up being a better situation than the double team. So I don't know what they're going to do with Landry. If they double team him, I would say, Matthews could have a decent game. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot this game. I know the last couple of games you saw Miami run the ball a lot, but this is really going to be a prove-it sort of game for the Dolphins because there's a lot of talk out there, and you mentioned it, since Dan Campbell came in as the head coach. They've been running the ball more. They've looked great, but you got to see who they've been playing against. I mean, they played against the Tennessee Titans and the Houston Texans, both pretty awful teams, especially against the run. So this is a game where they're going to be on the road. They're going to be trailing. We're going to see how that defense and offense looks right now. I think they may throw the ball more than people suspect, so Matthews could be a good play.
I agree with you there, and I think that Landry, I was high on Landry last week. I had him inside my top 10 wide receivers, and I felt like he was long overdue for touchdowns, and I didn't think 2 would come out of it, but they did, and they weren't even on red zone targets, which was kind of surprising. But Landry looked good, but the Patriots, like you said, they do, and they did, by the way. It was Butler that was on Decker pretty much all game, and Decker, he outplayed him quite a bit. I know he ended up with 94 yards. He didn't score, but I think Matthews is a sneaky wide receiver. I'll say like high-end 3. I don't want to say a wide receiver 2, but he's a sneaky play. I think Landry goes back to his, typical 6 catches, 70 yards, a 30% chance at a touchdown. I don't think that Landry is the wide receiver 1 that people have now kind of view him as after, the short-term memory thing that we do in fantasy football. Obviously, you're playing your studs, you're playing Brady, you're playing Gronk. All those are obvious ones, Lamar Miller. But we want to touch on the players that you may not necessarily be, you may be contemplating, like the Brandon LaFells or the Rashard Matthews. So I think that covers that game. Kevin, who do you pick to win that game?
I mean, I picked the Patriots to win. I don't know if I'm buying the Dolphins yet. They beat up on some pretty poor competition, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a blowout tonight.
Yeah, I saw a poll on NFL Network this morning, and it was 52% of people are picking the Dolphins. I was like, who's picking this game? Like maybe
Is this only in Miami?
Yeah, I didn't know if that was the poll, but seriously, like I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid when they're going into Foxborough or anything like that. But another game, it's kind of getting old with this whole London thing in the morning. Are you sick of this whole London thing, Kevin?
I'm not sick of it. I mean, it's kind of nice to have a game on in the morning. I think my wife is sick of it.
Yeah, usually the guys are putting it on it while they're laying in bed. I just don't like it because I'm usually in the morning. It's my time to kind of look over my rankings, go through players and stuff like that. But instead, I'm watching a game, and I just can't not watch a game when it's on at that time in the morning. So, Lions at Chiefs. The Lions fired Joe Lombardi, their offensive coordinator. That's going to change some things. So we're kind of unsure where this Lions offense is. Do you think? I mean, I think it helps Calvin Johnson. I actually think it helps Golden Tate because he's been pretty bad so far. But do you think that the move here is going to, what is it, Jim Bob Cooter? I think that's his name. Do you think it's going to help with Amir Abdullah, or is he still somebody that you're just not comfortable playing?
I mean, I think Abdullah is one of those situations where he didn't really produce that well when Joik Bell wasn't around. And then you saw Bell is kind of getting back into the mix. So it could be a bit messy. And kind of how, I think I mentioned this before, but Theo Riddick is really the problem with Amir Abdullah's production this year is that Theo Riddick looks pretty good. He's been effective. He's getting a lot of that passing work that you'd hope Abdullah would get. So you're going to need Theo Riddick to get, out of the picture, or you're going to need a game where the Lions are up a bunch and then decide to grind it out on the ground, and maybe Abdullah can get in the mix there. This game doesn't necessarily set up for either one of those things. So, I mean, there's hope, but they're really going to have to get rid of this three-headed backfield situation.
Yes. Now, Amir Abdullah is somebody for me, like people have asked me if they should drop him, like if the offense helps. I don't know if it helps. And yes, you're right. Riddick has stole the opportunities that we thought Abdullah would get. Now, with the new coaching staff, I don't know if maybe or the new offensive coordinator, I don't know if it changes, say, you know what, Abdullah's our future, or they say Riddick. I don't know where they're going with. They're the same back, essentially. I really believe that. I think Abdullah has a better long-term outlook, but Riddick has looked really good in the passing game. They both kind of bring that Reggie Bush type feel to the game where they're both good in the screen game, but you can't have two running backs like that and have them both produce. So I'm sitting Abdullah where possible just because I want to see if the new coaching staff involves him more in the passing game. But on the other side of the ball, that's who I did, Kevin. That was my trade. I traded, it was Charkandrick West and Jordan Matthews for Martavis Bryant, and then another piece, Marvin Jones. So Charkandrick West, do you think he's the real deal? Obviously, people were down on him. I said to give him another chance last week. I still liked him as an RB2 against Pittsburgh, but are you buying the fact that he's like this guy now? He's like, top 15 running back for the rest of the season?
Well, I mean, there's not a lot out there in the running back landscape, and especially if you get past the top handful of guys, it looks pretty nasty. So what you're going to get with West that you're not necessarily going to get with a lot of other guys is you're going to get volume. It looks like he's being involved in not only the running game, but the passing game. Niall Davis, his role is negligible. So I think that is it's a good situation to have. What we see with running backs, if you have opportunity and if your team is performing well, the offense as a whole is performing well, then you can score points. This week, they're going to be a favorite. The Detroit defense has not been very imposing this year. So West also has that hedge by getting involved in the passing game. So, I mean, I like him. He's not Jamal Charles, obviously, but there aren't a whole lot of backs you can point to across the league and say, hey, this guy is going to be involved in the running and the passing game, and he's just going to be getting a very high percentage of all the running back snaps.
Yeah, Spencer Ware actually played to get in front of Niall Davis last week. So Niall Davis is cuttable, guys. I think we talked about that before. I don't know. Niall Davis just, even before Charles got injured, Niall Davis wasn't playing. So they obviously have cut ties with him. They're done with him. They've kind of moved on. Charkandrick West, well, I do like him as a volume play. I just don't like the team. I just don't trust them. Jeremy Maclin didn't play last week. It seems like he's going to play this week. Macklin's a fantastic start against Detroit, who gets hammered by opposing number one receivers. Just all you got to do is go look through the game logs. I don't want to touch on it too much, but Macklin, if he plays, he's a top 12 receiver for me this week. I know that most are scared to put him there, but I love Macklin this week if he plays. Travis Kelce, still being underused, was wide open in the end zone. Alex Smith threw a drop down a 2-yard pass instead of hitting him in the end zone. It's frustrating. Kelce apparently is never going to be the tight end that we want him to be. He's never going to be mini Gronk when he plays in Kansas City, although they have the athleticism. So the next game is the Chargers at the Ravens. Phillip Rivers is on track to break records. He's on track to break the all-time passing record. I think he's on pace to throw for 5,500 yards, which is just madness. We know Keenan Allen's a start here. We think that Antonio Gates is probably going to sit another week because he's still not practicing. But the player that I'm like in shock about, I don't know what happened. I know the injury happened, but is Stevie Johnson going to get back on track? He's got the matchup this week. Is Stevie Johnson back on the wide receiver 3 radar, or are you just kind of like done with him?
Yeah, it's tough because you're getting such incredible volume out of the passing game there because San Diego really can't run the ball at all, and they've been trailing a lot. Yet Stevie Johnson, when he's been in there, hasn't been doing much. It really has just been Keenan Allen, who I'm kind of surprised. I was a little bit lower on Allen at the beginning of the year than most because I thought that Stevie Johnson was going to take away a lot of those looks. And once Gates came back, that would be another guy to take away some of the looks. But the fact that Rivers just seems to be really honing in on Gates and Allen when Gates is playing, just kind of leave Stevie Johnson out of the mix. So I think it's going to be really tough to play him going forward. And Allen's getting open, so why would he kind of change that ball distribution?
Yeah, well, Keenan Allen's had over 17 targets or more in 2 games. Stevie Johnson has had 7 or less in all games but 1, which was last week where he had 8 of them. I did like Stevie last week. He didn't produce. I'm a little concerned because he's falling in that territory of he lacks the upside that you'd want on a wide receiver 3, but he's not so bad that you bench him. He's in that weird area for me where I'm not feeling comfortable with Stevie. I don't know. I figured with Gates out and the matchup they had last week against Oakland was ideal. It just kind of fit. But right now I'm kind of wait and see mode. Although he does have another decent matchup against a Baltimore team that allows a whole lot of fantasy points to wide receivers. Now on the other side of the ball, the Ravens, Justin Forsett doing what Justin Forsett does. Kamar Aiken, Jesus. I had a guy ask me last week, okay, because he goes, I need it was Steve Smith or Kamar Aiken. He's like, who's guaranteed? All I need is 2 points. I'm like, or it was John Brown or Kamar Aiken. I was like, just go with Aiken because like he's at least going to be guaranteed to catch some passes. John Brown, we didn't even know if he was playing at that point, and didn't he have 1 catch for like 6 yards?
Yeah, I think it was something like that. Yeah, I had a matchup in one of my leagues where I had Steve Smith and the opponent had Aiken. I think Aiken got a catch at the beginning of the game, and Steve Smith didn't do anything at the very beginning. So I was thinking to myself, come on now, like I can't actually lose this. And then it was all one-sided after that. It's pretty amazing how Flacco is just totally zoning in on Steve Smith, and nobody else is doing anything out there. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Brashad Perryman ever comes back. I mean, they haven't put him on IR, and they just flipped, I think, Darren Waller onto IR when he had a hamstring injury really quickly. So maybe Perryman will be back someday, and if he is, it'll be interesting to see if he can ever get involved because Aiken is obviously not the guy.
Right. No, they don't. I just don't know what's going on there. Marlon Brown's been a disappointment. Aiken's been a disappointment. But Crockett Gilmore, he's one that interests me a little bit this week just because he's going up against a San Diego secondary that has allowed Eric Ebron 53 yards and a touchdown, Tyler Eifert 49 yards and a touchdown, Gary Barnidge 75 and a touchdown. Last week, they allowed a touchdown to Clive Walford. What do you think about Crockett Gilmore this week? Is he someone that you're willing to take a chance on if you're one that streams tight ends?
Yeah, if you stream tight ends, I think he's fine. Although there are a lot of tight end options that might be a little bit preferable. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play this week or not, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit later. But if Austin Seferian-Jenkins happen to make his way onto the waiver wire someplace, I'd probably pick him up and start him first.
All right, very good. Nice take. I like it. Moving on to the next game, Cardinals at Browns. Now, John Brown, we just talked about it. We didn't know if he was going to play last week. Supposedly, he had a specialist that came out that did some work on him before the games. He looked pretty good out there. I don't know what's going on. But now, Bruce Arians is hinting that He may not play against the Browns. They may just give him the week off. I don't know. It's because they feel like they can beat the Browns without him. Have you heard anything more on this situation?
No, I mean, it's the same thing that you heard just earlier today. They said that all indications are that he's not going to play this week.
Well, if that's the case, then you're moving up Michael Floyd against a Brown secondary that's been pretty awful. Michael Floyd would be a wide receiver 2 for me if John Brown is out. Larry Fitzgerald, despite his struggles, you keep trucking him out there. The matchup this week is fantastic against the Browns. I don't think we need to touch too much on that backfield. We know that Chris Johnson's a must start right now with the way he's running the ball. And by the way, Kevin, what did you think about that play where he was down like that?
He was obviously down. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, I had a guy that
stopped. His momentum completely stopped on that play. I mean, I think John Harbaugh said he stopped for 3 seconds. Now that was a bit of an overstatement, but he was clearly down. So I mean, I don't know what the refs are doing there. It's funny because the Baltimore Ravens, they're three. I mean, we just talked about them. I mean, they're a 3-point favorite at home against the Chargers. They're a good team, but they just cannot catch a break this year.
No, they can't. The injury bug has bit them really bad. But he was kind of like sitting on Santa's lap. He stopped down, then he's like, oh, I want to get off now, and he took off running, and he got caught. Obviously, the old Chris Johnson would have never been caught in that situation. But on the other side, Gary Barnidge, I don't know. I mean, I've definitely buying the Kool-Aid. He's a top 8 wide receiver every week, but the fact that this guy is so old, like, where did he come from? Like, what made the difference of Gary Barnidge?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of two different things happened at the same time. Barnidge and Duke Johnson got really involved in the passing game. Something about after that first Manziel stint and then he left, that really became more of a high-volume passing game. And if you look at the wide receivers that they have, it shouldn't be a surprise that the tight end can become involved. And he's decently athletic. So I think if a guy is going to kind of pop out of nowhere at a little bit of an older age, the tight end position is not a bad place to do that. I mean, we see typically rookie tight ends struggle a lot. So guys that have been in the league for a while, learn the blocking, learn things like that they can kind of come out of nowhere. And I think now he's really established himself as one of the main weapons in that offense. And you're not going to necessarily get Gronk-like performances, but you're going to get some pretty good performances out of Barnidge.
No, I agree. And the thing is like, I don't know. I have a tough time with tight ends this year. I'm not very great when it comes to ranking them, so I'm open to discussion on them. And I mean, like I said, I bought into to Barnidge. I just don't know what's going on. Duke Johnson, on the other hand, do you know he's the number 19 running back in PPR now after not catching a pass for, I think, was it the first 2 or 3 weeks that he didn't catch a pass?
Yeah, he didn't catch much. I mean, he had that concussion also, so he had some things going on. It was really weird because he was brought in, and the offensive coordinator that they brought in, the callers they brought him in from now, it's escaping me, but it was supposed to be a system that was designed to throw the ball a lot to the running backs, and it just didn't happen. So it was very strange, but that obviously has changed.
Yes, no, and that it obviously has. But there's some other teams that you look at that have played against this Arizona team that have the catching running backs. Ingram, 8 catches. Kyrie Robinson, 5. Forte, 4. Theo Riddick caught 10 passes against them. So Duke Johnson should be heavily involved this week. They're going to have to throw a bit against the Arizona team. I like Duke Johnson as a nice flex play. RB2 in PPR leagues. But that's, I mean, I guess Travis Benjamin, we could say that he's a low-end wide receiver 3, although I wouldn't really feel comfortable with him playing against Patrick Peterson this week. Next game, the Vikings at the Bears. Now, I know Xavier Rhodes has been looked at as a good corner for, the past couple of years, but he's been eaten alive this week. And I know a lot of people are asking me, should they trust Alshon Jeffrey against him? What's your take on Jeffrey this week? I love him as a great volume play that he should have a good shot to score.
You really can't ask me about Alshon Jeffrey because I'm irrationally high on Alshon Jeffrey. I draft him in probably half of my leagues this year, which obviously wasn't good because of the injury problems. But, when he's played, he's looked awesome. And if you look at the rest of the wide receivers on that team, nobody stepped up in his absence. You really just have Martellus Bennett and Matt Forte and Alshon Jeffrey. And I thought he looked fantastic in that first game back against the Lions. I mean, he had another fade that Cutler just threw a duck on a fade that could have been another touchdown. He had 150 yards. He had a touchdown. He caught a deep one. He was being used in there. He looked like a stud in the red zone. I mean, he's a guy at his age, for his second and third year in the league, he was a top 10 wide receiver from a fantasy perspective. The numbers he's put up, and that was alongside Brandon Marshall, who is just a complete target magnet. So, I mean, I really think the sky is the limit for him. He doesn't have the greatest matchups coming up, but I just don't see Jay Cutler not throwing the ball to him. Basically, I don't see him saying, "Oh, I'm gonna throw the ball to Marcus Wilson or Eddie Royal or someone else like that because of the matchup." I mean, Jeffrey's such a big dude and such a great target. I think even when he's covered, he's open. So I expect big things from him in the second half of the season.
Agreed. And Xavier Rhodes has allowed a touchdown in 4 of his last 5 games in coverage. On the season, he's been targeted 43 times, allowed 26 receptions for 361 yards, and those 4 touchdowns. So he's been going downhill for quite a while now. And Alshon Jeffrey is the next up on that list. Now, Alshon Jeffrey, though, I'm going to tell you, Kevin, since you're so high on him, after this week, I might sell if I'm you. I don't know if have you looked at his upcoming schedule?
Yeah, I know that his schedule isn't good. It's always tough, but I do think that it's a little bit more difficult to figure out when to sell a wide receiver or not, just because they're a little bit less schedule dependent. They're kind of matchup dependent upon the quarterback and things. I mean, upon the cornerback and things like that. So, I would sell him, but actually, I would think about selling him. I wouldn't sell him now because I don't think he's getting the type of value that he deserves. But a lot of the leagues that I'm in, there are no trades. So, I'm obviously not going to do it.
No, you're stuck with him in your MFL 10s. All right, so the next matchup, guys, is another receiver that you could probably buy low on right now before this game. AJ Green and the Bengals are headed into Pittsburgh. While this used to be a defensive struggle between these two teams, fireworks, I would assume, coming out of this game. I know Steelers defense they've kind of played over their head, and then their run defense reared its ugly head against the Steelers or against the Chiefs last week. Charkandrick West going over 100 yards and a touchdown. AJ Green's a fantastic buy low, but we don't want to touch on the players that aren't so obvious. But Jeremy Hill. Okay, Jeremy Hill, is he somebody that you're going to trot out there as an RB2, or do you try and look for someone like a Charkandrick West that you would probably start over him?
That is a very interesting choice. I mean, I think you'd have to lean towards Hill just based upon the fact that you're buying into the Bengals offense. And the Steelers defense hasn't been as bad as you might think, thinking about them in previous years. But if Ben Roethlisberger is playing in this game, I think you might see a real shootout in this. I mean, you have two offenses that have so many options. It's kind of crazy how many different options there are. If you look at the Bengals, you can have AJ Green, Marvin Jones, Eifert, the two backs out of the backfield, Hill and Bernard, and then on the other side you have Martavis Bryant, who's now emerged, along with obviously Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. So there could just be a lot of fireworks in this one, and Hill is going to be more of a volatile play, but he could be a week winning type of play if he can stuff it in the end zone a couple of times.
There you go. You heard it here. I like Hill as the buy low. I think Gio Bernard's due for a little bit of a regression. We know what he is at this point. Like, he's a 4 yards per carry type of guy. He's up around 5.1 right now. He hasn't scored as many touchdowns as Hill has, and I don't think that changes at all. I think that the schedule starts to lighten up, and you should start to see more Jeremy Hill. I like him as a buy low. I don't know if you should wait any longer because, like I said, the Steelers, while they're not as bad as maybe we thought they would be, I don't think they're as good as they have played. Going through the numbers against the pass, actually PFF and pass coverage, they have them ranked as the worst defense in pass coverage. I didn't think that they'd be that low. But Marvin Jones is an interesting guy. He's a sell high for me. I put him in my sell high piece this week for PFF. He's going to be up and down. His targets are not going to be there. He's very touchdown dependent, and he's kind of, you could argue, the fourth option on that team behind AJ Green, Tyler Eifert, and then Gio Bernard. So if you could sell high on Marvin Jones right now, I'd do it. I know some people are getting, say, like a Michael Crabtree for him. I would do that. Or even a Devontae Adams. I would trade him for there. But on the other side of the ball, if Ben Roethlisberger plays, we start everybody, don't we?
Oh, totally. We definitely start everybody. And I think I don't know if anyone's going to trade Antonio Brown, but you probably can get him for at least less than what he would have cost to start the season. I don't know if anyone is treating him like the number one wide receiver, which he probably was in PPR leagues this year, but I don't see any reason why he can't perform like a top 2 or 3 guy the entire rest of the season. with Ben Roethlisberger back. So if you want to make one of those kind of Godfather type orders and just pile in everything that you got for Antonio Brown, I wouldn't argue against it.
I actually agree with you, and I tried trading for Antonio Brown in a few leagues, but nobody was having it. They were on to me. But in the first 3 weeks, he had 9 catches in 2 of them, 11 catches in the other, over 108 yards in every game. Like, the guy was just going off. A lot of people don't forget that. Some people are now calling Antonio Brown quarterback dependent. I thought it was quite hilarious.
Well, I saw some people kind of tongue-in-cheek tweet that Antonio Brown, you're like the second best wide receiver on the Steelers. But let's not get crazy here, guys. I mean, Martavis Bryant is a good receiver, but I think once Ben's back in there and the timing of that passing game, it's going to be bombs to Martavis Bryant, some of the kind of goal line work, but Antonio Brown's still going to get fed.
Yes, I like it. I like Martavis Bryant as an upside guy. That's what I like him as. I mean, in PPR leagues, he's not as valuable as people would think because he's going to have games where he's got 2 catches for 40 yards and no touchdown. And then he's going to have the games where he's got 4 catches for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's going to happen. But to sit here and talk about him, like, how short-term is our memory right now? Like, I know we have to adapt as time goes on, but to sit here and talk about Martavis Bryant, I don't even want to get into it. It's just, people were telling me that Antonio Brown's quarterback dependent now. I mean, anybody with Michael Vick will suck at football. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I mean, there was just no volume in that passing game at all.
Yeah. I mean, I just felt bad. Like, and I'm not a, Antonio Brown love guy. Like, I do think that he's fantastic. He's a great talent, but I'm not like, Julio Jones is my dude. That's my guy. But man, I heard some of that stuff and I was just like, people talking about taking Mike Evans over Antonio Brown in Dynasty. No. Okay, I'm not going to go on a tangent there. But
yeah, we'll talk about Mike Evans later, I'm sure, in your skepticism.
Oh God, yes, we will. The Titans and Ken Wisenhunt, hate Ken Wisenhunt, heading to Houston to play the Texans, the Arian Foster-less Texans. Is this a game? Are the Texans favored in this game?
I don't think there is a line on this game. I don't know. I haven't seen the line, at least, because we don't know if Mariota is going to play at this point.
I don't even know if this game's actually going to happen. I think the NFL might just cancel it. But seriously, I've had people asking me about David Cobb and whether or not they should pick him up with it coming up. I think he can return. Is it next week? Can he return? Is that what it is?
Yeah. I think it's week 9.
I'm staying away. I'm not touching any Titans running back. I think he's going to just sit here and say it's a 4-headed monster. I don't think David Cobb is talented enough to make Ken Wisenhunt say, you know what? He's so talented. We can't keep these other guys off the field. He thinks that Dexter McCluster is the next, CJ Spiller. He thinks that Antonio Andrews is, Kyrie Robinson, apparently. I don't know. But I stay away from the Titans as a whole. It seems like Marcus Mariota may try and play in this game. The only one that I probably would play from the Titans is Kendall Wright. And even him, I'm not too excited about playing him. I mean, just because we just don't know what to expect. But I liked Kendall Wright last week. He did score. Should have scored the week before. How do you feel about Kendall Wright this week? Where would you play him? And who are the few of the guys that you may think about playing him over?
Yeah, Kendall Wright is one of these guys where I drafted him a decent amount, just figuring that he would be the number one option in that pass game. And he played pretty well the first couple of games of the season, but there were hints that there could be trouble moving forward because he was producing on pretty low volume and he was getting some long plays. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but he had that really long touchdown to start the season against Tampa Bay. So that's kind of come to fruition. It's just not a high volume, rapid paced offense for Tennessee. So I think Kendall Wright's an okay option, but I would go with someone like, if you had Stephon Diggs or someone else that you picked up, I would definitely go with someone first who looks like that they're probably going to see more targets.
Yeah, Kendall Wright has seen 6 or fewer targets in all games but 2 of them. In the 2 games where he saw more than 6 targets, he did score, racked up, I think it was close to 80 yards a game and 2 touchdowns. So Kendall Wright is someone that he complained about his target share, and I don't blame him. There's nobody else on the team. Like Justin Hunter, we know that by now, I think Justin Hunter, I think we can call him a bust, right? I mean, he didn't perform with any of the quarterbacks he's been with. He hasn't really shown much of anything. I know he's got that size speed combo, but Dorial Green Beckham is a bigger, better version of him. and he's not getting necessarily the snaps that we want him to get. So I can't argue with Kendall Wright that he should see more targets in this offense. It's just frustrating to see him underused, and when he is used, he actually pays off. But the best thing is, in 1 week fantasy, football, it's back, guys. And it already feels like the playoffs thanks to 1 week fantasy at DraftKings.com. With millions being won each week, every play could take you closer to a life-changing payday. I took a shot on Dorial Green-Beckham in a few lineups last week. It didn't really pan out. But this isn't fantasy as usual, guys. Your redraft league doesn't play like this. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code PFF to play for free with your first deposit in this Sunday's $1 million fantasy football contest. First place takes home $100,000. Enter PFF for free entry now at DraftKings.com. That is DraftKings.com. Kevin, did you see that debate that kind of took place? And Twitter was loving it, by the way. They talked about fantasy football. There was like a 45-minute segment. It was a political debate. Did you see that?
I saw some tweets about it. I didn't actually see it, but someone had retweeted something from earlier this year where Jeb Bush tweeted about his fantasy team that he drafted Peyton Manning in the second round. Come on, man. But he had some other picks that were okay. So I guess he's doing all right. But it was funny to see that.
Yeah, he did have Gronk, and then he took Tannehill in the later rounds. So he's rooting for both those guys tonight, and they both should have fantastic games for what it's worth. All right, so now the second side of that game, DeAndre Hopkins, we know we're starting him, but the one that's on the border, Nate Washington. Now, Nate Washington, is he somebody that you debate playing over Kendall Wright?
I can't believe that I'm actually thinking that you might want to do that. I mean, he's always seen volume when he's been in there. Or Cecil Shorts has seen volume. So they just thrown the ball a tremendous amount. I mean, there is an outside chance that this is, if you're to mark any game on the schedule where they're not going to have to throw the ball 50 times because they're trailing by 30 points in the first half, this is one of those games. So I don't necessarily think the volume is going to be there for him. I think I would still start Wright first just because if it goes against me and Washington does nothing and Wright does something, I'd probably feel worse than the reverse.
Yeah. We already talked about it. We already talked about the backfield there. It's kind of a toss-up. I don't know. I would lean Alfred Blue this week, but I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him or Polk. So I don't want to touch too much on that. The Giants at the Saints. Odell Beckham has been really, really up and down this year. But you're continuing to trot him out there. But the surprise last week was Orleans Darkwa. Is this kid for real? Like, I'm not buying the whole. I'm not touching him just because it's kind of like one of those Tennessee backfields where you don't know who to trust every single week.
Yeah, it was very strange, quite honestly. I know Jennings hasn't been performing well, but nobody is running the ball well there. Darkwa had a couple of big carries, but, it could just be completely random. Jennings had some big plays this year too, so I just don't see them completely turning over the backfield to him, and if that's not the case, then that backfield is just a mess. And it just became stay away, and now it's, just completely lock it up and throw away the key and don't even look at it.
I agree. I'm far away from that backfield. I don't want to touch it. Now, on the other side, Kyrie Robinson stole a couple touchdowns from Mark Ingram last week. Now, I know a lot of fantasy owners are upset about this. They're like, why are they doing this? If it's working, they're not going to stop. It doesn't make sense for them to stop if it's working. Now, I think Kyrie Robinson is a guy that I know, Kevin, you and I had talked about at the beginning of the year that he's a fantastic stash. And I know he's on waiver wires in 80% of leagues. So he's someone that I'm advocating right now that you grab off the waiver wire because he's kind of like a two-player backup. We talked about it. CJ Spiller, Mark Ingram. If something happens to one of those guys, he takes over their role. Like, are you still standing by that?
Yeah, no, definitely. If you saw the first couple of games before CJ Spiller came back, Robinson was usable. They still want to involve him in the game, even with those other guys there. And, I think he could be better running back than Mark Ingram, quite honestly, but they've both been effective, so I don't want to trash Ingram too much. But it's one of those situations where I was really hoping in the offseason that Mark Ingram was going to leave and they were going to allow Kyrie Robinson to kind of be that guy. What's funny is last week, because I have Deion Lewis on so many different rosters, when I had to take him out and with the different buys, I was forced to throw Kyrie Robinson into a couple different lineups, and he paid off. I don't expect that to happen much going forward, but it shows you that when given him a small opportunity, he can put up numbers. So I think he's a guy where he can be a desperation start, a true desperation start. But if he gets that opportunity, and Ingram's been someone who's had health problems in the past, and obviously Spiller has, he's definitely a good RB2 in that situation.
Yep, glad to hear that we are on the same page there. And another person that I want to touch on before I leave this game for good, Brandon Cooks. He's averaged close to 80 yards per game since Brees returned from his injury. He scored just the one touchdown, and it wasn't garbage time. Last week, they didn't really have to take many shots downfield against the Colts because they were leading the entire game. I do think Brandon Cooks is a fine buy low, guys. I know that some people are scared about it. I know his talent didn't transcend the way you wanted it to the pros, but I think he's being undervalued right now. I think he's back in the wide receiver 2 conversation. And with Prince Amukamara out again, I like this matchup for him. I'm going to keep trotting him out there as a low-end wide receiver 2, waiting for that explosion that it's going to happen. But the next game, we're not going to touch much on at all. The 49ers at Rams. Carlos Hyde, he's a volume play. I don't think he's as bad as people think. The fracture in his foot's going to hurt him. Todd Gurley, obviously starting him everywhere as a top 3 running back. He's somebody that is changing my opinion on him every single game I see. It's just, wow. He makes everything look easy. That's the best way I could put it. Do you have any thoughts on this game? Anything you want to say before I move on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a kind of an obvious, the only one player that you could start in this game, and that's Todd Gurley. Other than that, if you don't own Todd Gurley, don't waste any time watching this game.
That's kind of how I feel. Well, I do own Carlos Hyde in a few leagues, so I might pay attention, even though it's rough on him. The game script should help him out, though, that they shouldn't get blown out by the Rams, even though it is in St. Louis.
It's an 8-point spread, so you never know.
8 points?
Yeah.
What? When are the Rams favored by? Okay, I guess Colin Kaepernick can make that happen. Play the Rams.
At least one pick six just built into that line.
I was about to say, play the Rams defense. They won't be $2,400 on DraftKings again. I promise you that. They were last week, and I think 67% of lineups had the Rams defense.
Yeah.
It was quite obvious, I think. But the next game, this is the one. Mike Evans and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are heading to Atlanta. Vincent Jackson's pretty much already been ruled out. They're saying that he may actually miss a couple weeks with this injury. So all of the hate that I've directed towards Mike Evans, I kind of have to backtrack a little bit just because he's going to see DeAndre Hopkins type targets. Not only is Vincent Jackson out, but Louis Murphy, the slot receiver there, is also out for the year. So obviously, the Falcons defense has looked better than some people think, but Mike Evans primarily lines up on Robert Alford's side of the field, not Desmond Trufant. Trufant has been really, really good in coverage, like a lockdown. Like he's like that Richard Sherman on that side of the field that's been for the Seahawks the last couple of years. Like I'm not comparing him to Richard Sherman, but that's the type of production that he's been limiting that side too. But Mike Evans, I told people before last week, I said, Mike Evans is going to have a big week. He should blow up, okay? But I want you to remember what he's done for you up until this point. No one listened. Not a single person. Not a single person. I actually got so much hate. I've never received. I don't get into too many arguments with people on Twitter, but Mike Evans is one that obviously prompts people a certain way, that make them feel a certain way, and they felt the need to project that at me because I said that he hasn't been very good in his career outside of a 3-game stretch from last year. And while most people want to sit here and talk about, okay, well, Mike, his quarterback play has been like he had Josh McCown, Mike Glennon, and now Jameis Winston. Okay, Josh McCown, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey did pretty well with him. Then you go out to where he is now. Travis Benjamin, Gary Barnidge are doing pretty good with him. Okay. Jameis Winston, Vincent Jackson was doing just fine. I don't get it. I really don't. You can't make that argument with me when the other receivers that have played with that quarterback have done fine. Evans heading into last week had caught 13 passes on 33 targets, I think it was. He was rated the worst receiver by PFF in their wide receiver grades. Like when targeted, he was just really bad. Kevin, are you able to talk me off a ledge? Like, I'm not saying that Evans, you should just give him away. He's a top-end wide receiver, 2 for me with VJax out because of targets. But I don't know. I just don't see the kid as a wide receiver. Everybody tells me he's a lock. He's a wide receiver 1. Typically, wide receiver ones do not make you wait until week 7 for a wide receiver 1 performance. And don't give me the crap that he was hurt, because he received 17 targets the one game. If a player's actually hurt, you're not going to target him that much.
Yeah, no, I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. I was off of Evans to start the season because I just wasn't sure he was going to see the volume, and who knows what's going to happen with Winston. I mean, all that being said, when he does perform, it looks good. So I think you look at him, you say he's a 6'5", he's 200 and whatever, 30 pounds, whatever he is. He runs down the field, he kind of tosses guys aside sometimes. So yeah, it's interesting. Now I think. I wasn't necessarily putting him in the bucket of someone that you should trade because I think he could have some big games coming up here. But you're right. People really do love him a lot. So if you can get a lot out of him, then, why not go ahead and trade him if you can get that type of top 10 wide receiver price.
Well, yeah, we were talking about it last week. I'm not usually a player-for-player type trading guy, but basically I had some guys asking me if they should trade Mike Evans for Demaryius Thomas. And I said, yeah, do it. Okay. Now, like I said, I don't want people to take this as Mike Evans is never going to be good at football. I'm not saying that. The kid, he's very, very, very young. I think he's very immature. I think he thinks he's better than he is. And that could be very harmful to a young receiver that feels like he doesn't have to improve. I think he feels like after last year, he should be respected in the NFL, where he had, I don't know. I don't want to spend too much more time on it. I'm not saying Mike Evans can't be good someday. I'm just sitting here. Don't tell me that he's a lock for wide receiver 1 performance when what we've seen up to this point has told us nothing of that. Okay. Now, on the other hand, Julio Jones. Julio Jones, my favorite receiver in the NFL. I threw out a stat on Twitter that he's a different player when he's on the injury report and when he's not. Okay. He was on this year in 4 games off the injury report. He's averaged 14.8 targets, 10.8 catches, 133 yards, and has 5 touchdowns. In the 3 games where he has been on the injury report, 8.3 targets, 5 receptions, 66 yards per game, and 0 touchdowns. So Julio Jones is off the injury report this week. Is he your number 1 wide receiver?
I think so. I mean, if Big Ben is playing, maybe I could say Antonio Brown, but it's kind of tough to put anyone above a healthy Julio.
I agree. And Devonta Freeman must play, obviously. Even though he had a down game last week, he's still the number 2 fantasy running back over the last 2 weeks. So Devonta Freeman is a lock. Love this game. I actually love Matty Ice to bounce back. I know that we talked about it last week and he should have, but him at home in the Dome, if it doesn't happen here, I'm a little concerned. But the next game, the Jets at the Raiders. A fun fact about the Jets, I found, they have only allowed 2 running backs all season to score more than 6.1 fantasy points. And they were both in the same game. It was that game where DeMarco Murray was ruled inactive, and Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles both had fantastic games against them. Outside of that, the Jets typically allow anywhere from 3 to 6 fantasy points to opposing running backs. Latavius Murray, are you trying to bench him this week?
I mean, I'd think about it if I had another option. The problem with Murray isn't just this matchup, it's the fact that he hasn't been as heavily involved. I mean, you could say it coincided somewhat with when Roy Halou came back, but they're just mixing in other guys. Marcel Reese, Halou's getting some work. Tywan Jones is getting some work, and he's just not getting that hefty volume that you'd like to see to be effective, especially in a matchup like this.
Yeah, and I think that's where it comes down to for me. That's why Latavius Murray is somebody that I would try and bench this week. Honestly, I would not be shocked. I mean, I might go back on this and be like, what the hell was I thinking? But I think that Charles Sims may actually outperform Latavius Murray this week. Do you think I'm crazy for thinking that?
No, not at all. I mean, Sims has been effective, and it's kind of amazing that Doug Martin's been playing so well with Sims so involved at the same point in time. Obviously, in Tampa, they really like Sims. I mean, Sims is the guy that they drafted. So in a game that projects for them to be down big, Sims could be heavily involved.
Yep. All right. So on the other side, the Raiders, Amari Cooper is going to be on Revis Island. I know Amari Cooper, he's proven me wrong. Like Amari Cooper, I love him. Actually, I said it in Dynasty. I don't know what it would take for me to give him up, but I love him. I think he's a young Anquan Bolden with a little bit more speed. I love Amari Cooper, but Revis Island this week is going to be a little bit tough. I don't see playing him as anything more than a wide receiver 3 in this matchup. Michael Crabtree should be matched up more against Antonio Cromartie and Buster Skrine. So, or Screen, I don't know how you want to pronounce it, but would you play Michael Crabtree over Amari Cooper this week?
I don't think so, but I mean, Crabtree's been getting a lot of targets, but I think you could have said that like 5 weeks in a row, and he still isn't doing that much with those targets. So I would say that what they've done with Cooper is, even last week, if you look at last week, I was kind of fading Cooper because he had a fairly tough matchup. But he got a deep ball that was on zone coverage, and then he got a long wide receiver screen. So hopefully they can figure out ways to keep him involved, even if he's seeing a lot of Darrelle Revis.
I hope so too. I hope they get creative and find a way to get him the ball. He's a fantastic route runner. Not to say that he's going to walk away with a big fat 0 or anything like that. It's just, it's a little bit rough this week. Darrelle Revis, fantastic. He's allowed 1 touchdown in coverage, and it was to Pierre Garçon on a short little slant on like the 2-yard line. So
yeah, I mean, he's an amazing run after the catch type of guy. So I think that helps in really difficult matchups because he might not see a lot of target volume, but if he can take one of those targets and get a lot of yards after the catch, that can pile up some points.
Yeah, and it's been a little disappointing to me, the fact that he's only seen 47 targets on the year. That's just over 7 per game, while Crabtree has seen 54. I mean, I think it's going to slowly start to trend the opposite way. And if you want to trade for Amari Cooper, I know it's going to be, you don't want to do it right now. His price is through the roof. But after this week, his schedule lightens up quite a bit. I like Amari Cooper as a borderline wide receiver 1 after this week, the rest of the way. So get Amari Cooper if you can for cheap. Maybe someone thinks that they can sell high on him. I don't know. But I just think the targets are going to go up and his talent will transcend. So moving on to the next game, Seahawks at the Cowboys. Christine Michael revenge game. I don't know.
Could happen.
Yeah,
it could happen. I mean, Joseph Randle is who knows what that guy's up to. What his mental mind state is.
He took off on the team. He left. Like he apparently just went AWOL, and now apparently there's reports everywhere that the Cowboys might just be done with him altogether. I'm like, really? Like, it didn't seem like it was that big a thing, but it was. They said it was a personal matter, but now they're supposed to.
Well, he might get suspended anyway by the NFL. McFadden coming in. I tweeted something earlier today, and it was kind of interesting because after this last weekend, I saw a lot of kind of dead to me sort of sentiment about Christine Michael. The fact that everyone was saying, well, if he can't get any work with Joseph Randle out, then what good is he? But in reality, if you think about the situation, I mean, he's probably in the best position he's been in all year long, negating the unreigned whatever nonsense that you were hearing last week. I mean, the fact that Randle is out, and who knows if he'll even be back at all, and he's sitting behind a guy who has been one of the worst running backs in the league as far as efficiency the last couple of years, and injured constantly. I mean, this is probably a good point to buy in on him if some people are really kind of in that dead to me mode.
I agree. And the reason I agree is because, like you said, if Joseph Randle, if something happens with him, if he's suspended, if anything were to happen, obviously Darren McFadden receiving 25 plus carries he's not going to hold up. I mean, there are some guys that are they're fragile, and Darren McFadden's one of those people. So if instead de facto, if we add all this up together, Christine Michael could be a workhorse running back within like a week or two. It wouldn't shock me at all. I think Darren McFadden's a good option in PPR leagues this week against Seattle. In standard leagues, he's still like, an RB3, we'll call it. But Des Bryant looks like he's going to play. Are you going to play him?
What's funny is I take a very wide receiver heavy approach to my drafting, so I'm actually not going to play him this week. I mean, it's not a good matchup. You have Matt Castle at quarterback. I mean, I just really wish that they were not. I mean, I don't think that they're forcing him out there. I think, you have Jerry Jones being Jerry Jones, and then you have Des Bryant who's just talking his way onto the field. I mean, the type of injury that he has is extremely susceptible to re-injury or something else happening. It's just a really poor matchup. They're an underdog. I mean, I guess they might think their whole season is on the line right now, so that's part of it. But I really wish that he would rest up for one more week before getting out there, because I don't think I'm going to start him anywhere, even though I'm stashing him on a handful of teams.
As a fantasy owner, I concur, and I would say I wish that he would sit out one more week because I really don't feel comfortable using him this one. But in a way, I feel like I kind of have to in some. But Des Bryant, he's a wide receiver 3 this week that you could throw out there. Say you have somebody on a bye, but if you have a legit option, put them out there instead. But like here's a question: if somebody has Michael Crabtree and Des Bryant, who do they play?
Oh, I probably play him. I probably play him over Crabtree. It just in a couple of leagues that I have him. I also have someone like, Stephon Diggs or someone like that I'm putting in first. Until Crabtree is doing something, with those targets, I would probably still play him in front of Crabtree.
Very good. Packers at Broncos. Everybody's been waiting for this one. Sunday night, both 6-0 teams coming off their bye week. Plenty of time to plan. Randall Cobb against Chris Harris. That's not a good matchup. I think Randall Cobb is more of a wide receiver 2 in this matchup, even though he's due for a bounce back. It's not the game that it's likely going to happen. James Jones, Devontae Adams looks like he's coming back. Eddie Lacy's the starter. Oh man, this Packers team. Do you trust Eddie Lacy this week, or do you kind of keep him riding your pine, hoping for a touchdown? I mean, I just want to see some life out of him. That's all I want to see. I don't expect much against this Broncos front, but Eddie Lacy, are you feel comfortable if you start him as an RB2 or a flex?
I mean, it's going to depend on what you hear from the injury reports the rest of the week, but you're hearing, about the best possible scenarios. The fact that James Starks can't practice after a bye week sounds very strange to me. So, if it continues trending in that direction, I think you have to play Lacy, and because that the Packers are going to be able to move the ball. It's not like that they aren't going to have scoring opportunities. So when you have a big back like Lacy, you can get a couple of touchdowns, and I think that probably vaults him over a lot of the guys in that kind of RB, mid-teen sort of range that you'd be playing instead of him.
That is a tough range to predict, and one of those running backs in that range for me is Ronnie Hillman. Ronnie Hillman, he's got to be the guy coming out of the bye, I would think. Now, all of a sudden, I think it's just the popular thing. When somebody's not performing, like, Mike Evans or C.J. Anderson, who I liked coming into the year, there's no shame in admitting that you liked a player that just didn't perform. It happens. But C.J. Anderson now saying, well, I was just more hurt than I thought. I don't know. He doesn't look like he has the burst, but I also just think that the offense not scoring nearly as much is hurting him. Peyton Manning not opening it up. I don't know. What do you feel about C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman backfield?
I mean, I think it's probably a bit more ambiguous than some are thinking. I mean, some are kind of assuming that Hillman's going to be the guy. I mean, C.J. Anderson has still been pretty involved. That they could have turned it over to Hillman, a couple of weeks ago if they wanted to just purely go with the guy that has more big playability. I just don't think they see Hillman as being a foundational type of back. And there might be some truth to what C.J. Anderson was saying with the injuries. I mean, when you have something like an ankle injury, it can sometimes be a little bit frustrating for owners because unlike a hamstring or something like that that'll tighten up and just completely take someone out of the game, the ankle injury is something where if you're a football player, you're going to say, I can play, so therefore I will play. And he really seemed to have lost some of his burst. So this is kind of a make or break game for C.J. Anderson. I think he'll still be decently involved. He is somebody, if you're going to figure anyone who might be able to kind of pop out of nowhere and return to some of the old form, of course not his original ADP value, but he could be an interesting guy because I just don't think Hillman's going to be an every down back.
There you go. I agree. I don't think that Hillman's going to be an every down back. I just think that he's earned more of the starting role, I guess, if you will. So, I mean, I just see more of a time split towards Hillman. So I would play Hillman over C.J. Anderson, but I hope you're right about C.J. Anderson. I hope that it does happen because there's leagues where I literally have been teetering on dropping him, and I'm sure it'll feel pretty good if I did. But at the same time, I've been holding out some small sliver of hope. But I think one of them should score this week against the Packers. That's just kind of my take on it. It's kind of like a risk-reward type deal with the Broncos running backs right now. But the last game of the week, Monday night, the Colts at the Panthers. Cam Newton MVP. Does it? I don't know. Does the 6-0 Panthers lose to the Colts in this game?
I think they could. I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility. I mean, the Colts are, they're not good, obviously. They haven't played well on offense. You have Josh Norman, and who's going to be out there covering the wide receiver. So it's a tough matchup. But the Panthers aren't really that great, I don't think, either. I mean, they have one of the softest schedules in the NFL. Everyone who's playing in that NFC South has, the best schedules in the league coming into this year was what was predicted, because not only they're going to play against each other, but they were going to get a chance to play against the AFC South. So I think the Colts are a team that could turn things around. I mean, they've been pretty awful. They're 3-4. They could kind of reassert themselves and go ahead and run away with the division, and I think that'll probably end up happening. So I think this is one that could surprise some people, and if I were going to pick someone who could come away with a big road upset, I think the Colts are one of those, is a good choice.
I am on board with that because I think that Andrew Luck being 0-4 in his starts, starting to eat at the Colts a little bit. One of the other buys that I had in my buy and sell article for PFF was buying Andrew Luck. And while some people like that actually just dig into numbers might see, well, Mike, it's not really buying low because Andrew Luck has performed the last couple of weeks. But here's the thing. Public perception on the Colts team as a whole will weigh a little bit on fantasy owners' minds, especially like the public perception. Like thinking like, well, Andrew Luck's not playing good and they're losing and they're not doing this. Like what's going on with them? Like it's just a natural panic that you would have about a team. But Andrew Luck is strictly a volume type passer who's actually hasn't played as bad as people have thought. Their defense had put them in bad spots where he had to take some chances that he probably wouldn't necessarily take last week. But then some people might argue that he put those players in that. Josh Norman doesn't strictly shadow receivers. He sticks to his side of the field. He should see plenty of T.Y. Hilton this week. Also a little bit of Dante Moncrief. Moncrief has scored in every single game that he's played with Andrew Luck this year. Now, Kevin, if you had to choose between T.Y. Hilton and Dante Moncrief for the rest of the season, who would you take?
I think I would still take T.Y. Hilton just because he's probably getting a little bit more volume. I mean, he was kind of banged up earlier this year. I don't think that they see Moncrief as being their number one guy, but it's pretty close. So it's not clearly definitive. I just think you have to give the nod to Hilton just kind of based upon where you assume they are in the depth chart.
Yeah, I think in a best ball format, I would probably say Hilton just because he's going to score more points, I'd say, because of the upside that he showed last week. But he also did have just 3 catches. So if he doesn't, break those, Moncrief's a more stable option, I would think, with Luck. But either way, guys, it's a good matchup for Monday night. I'm glad we have an actual good game. Hopefully it shows to be a good game. Obviously, you're going to start Frank Gore, Jonathan Stewart looking fantastic recently. I don't really know if I trust I don't think I trust any of the Carolina Panthers options, Ted Ginn, if any of them. But Greg Olsen. Well, I mean, did I say pass catchers? Because if I did, then I screwed that up.
Well, maybe you did. I'm just throwing it out there.
But yeah, Greg Olsen. I mean, if you have him, I think you start Greg Olsen every week. But yeah, that's going to pretty much wrap it up. Kevin, you have any thoughts you want to give before we get out of here?
I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I think this is kind of a make or break week for a lot of different teams. The Colts, the Miami Dolphins. You're going to have to see what these guys are really made of. Even the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, if they can't, stomp on Tampa Bay at home this week, then you're really going to have to worry about them. So I think this is when kind of guys are proving themselves. And I also think it is an option where you could see some players kind of get back towards their ADP. I think specifically when we're talking about Lacey and CJ Anderson, I want to see what those 2 guys are going to do this year because I don't think they're completely dead at this point.
There you go. That's actually the game that I'm looking forward to the most. Denver, Green Bay, both 6-0 teams. This game means a lot to both teams, so you're going to find out who's important to them, who's not, and how they kind of view the starters and the backups and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to that game. It's nice to have a Sunday night game where we're not going to watch Sam Bradford. But that's wrapping it up, guys. Don't forget, you guys can subscribe to us on PFF Radio on iTunes, listen on Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, and watch the show on YouTube as well as Fantasy Sports Network. And also, as well, guys, the PFF Gold subscription. Don't forget that, $29.99. I understand $30 isn't the smallest amount of money, but when it comes to everything that you get, especially if you're a DFS player, you get DFS optimizers on there. You can customize them for every single of the major sites. You have DraftKings, Yahoo, you have FanDuel. Like, there's a lot of them on there. Check it out, $29.99. It pays for itself, guys. You can also view the articles from Kevin and I, as well as check us out on Twitter at Mike Tagliere NFL, and Kevin is at Cole_Kev. But that's going to wrap it up for you guys. We will see you before week 9. But until then, guys, lights out.